So I come from a family where there was no art because my parents were busy putting bread on the table after they came from Pakistan. Education was the most important thing for my dad. And that has been his motto. And I know the motto of many, many people who suffered partition on both sides of the border. Punjab did not have the time to really, even if there was culture, navigate because Punjab was busy defending India from invaders. So if you ask me, my parents come from a very cultured background. No, my Nana was. But by the time they came to India, I think there was just no time to develop culturally. Again, but I feel वो कहते हैं लिखा होता है, and my I think all that's happened into my life was predestined. Of course, I worked hard for it, but the fact that I was in the school I was, where my teachers were practicing artists, and they insisted that I take up art as a profession. And they said, "Will your parents agree?" I said, "My parents will never not agree." I go back to my childhood. My mother said that she never said no to me when I used to scribble on the walls. I think I look back and I feel that must have been where it all started. My teacher is Ramachandran, Mr. Ramachandran. He was always my backbone, And as they say, education's not about a classroom. I was going to his house, having the meal with him, sitting with him and his wife, seeing his collection of miniatures, talking to him about Kerala. I feel he was that visual, auditory dictionary for me for the life I needed to live. I joined Indira Gandhi Center for Arts. I needed to study miniature paintings, dance, classical music in a very, not in a deep manner, but how it influenced the 13th century poem which Jaydev made. All of this done, my mother insisted I get a studio. She told my dad, get a studio for her next to your office. Okay. And rest, as it says, history. I think I just kept listening to my heart, and I still do, Shabana. I think my work is a lot to do with my gut, with my life. If you see my body of work, you will be able to actually see my life through my body of work.
Okay.
Whether it's my family or my brother's love for astronomy or my sister-in-law's musical background where she's the lead singer for Cirque du Soleil, Elvis. So it's all Star Wars. I got married to a man who loved Star Wars and James Bond.
Okay.
So he made sure I watched all the movies. So all of that has entered my practice.
What is the one or two lessons you learned from your teacher that still, you kind of follow in your
he's always been a very proud Indian in terms of what India offers as a heritage to the world. I also studied at the Ramakrishna Mission, where I was taught by sannyasis.
Okay.
And the whole idea of universality was so relevant in where I studied when I was a kid. Christmas, they would call the nuns to have carols. For Eid. They would have a celebration for Diwali. So I came from that school where universality of humankind was entrenched in us, Then you meet someone like Mr. Ramachandran. The second is listen to your heart. And that meant also not listening to him.
Okay.
So I reached a stage where he would have issues with me. That is something with a guru. A guru is a guru. But when you find yourself, all that they've given you is also a way of discerning, this is what I want to do. I've done this big project of photographing the Indian art world in their studios, which is now in its 24th years. And it started because I would photograph Mr. Ramachandran, take his video, audio, because he's such a mecca of knowledge. And I said, the world needs to know him the way I know him. So I have 40 years of documentation of him. Someday it could be a book, a movie, but the process of carrying the camera to his studio became extended to my art world. I started carrying the camera to my artist friend studios, to the lunches and to art camps. And I had no plan to make a project, but now, Shabana, it is the only visual archive of the Indian art world captured by a fellow artist.
Wow.
It's so living and so significant. Now that's something he would say, "Tum painting kyun nahi karta?" Because he's a purist. He's led his life by that. And not that he ever said, don't do it. But I knew that was not something he was comfortable with. He felt I should paint, but he taught me that. Listen to your heart. And I remember once I told him, sir, how is it like when you would go to Kinkarda? So Ram Kinkar Bej was his guru in Shantiniketan. I said, how is it like when you got married, came to Delhi and you were working? What was your association like with this, your guru, when you would go show your works? And he said, I didn't show my works to him. I knew what I was doing. So that gave me an answer. You get me? And that is where we come in as human beings. So kiske saath tum? Surround yourself with beautiful souls around you. So your learning is accelerated. With all this surrounding you, eventually it's your decision, your discernibility. How do you take who you are, where do you want to be? Listen to your heart. Your heart will tell you what you want to do. Sometimes your loved ones might not be with you on that. But if you're convinced, that is your answer. And I did that with art. I did that with my photography project. And I've done that with my partition project. It was, I had to bring the stories of India, Pakistan together. And that's the way I lead. Even my process of working, Shabana, is that. I mean, I actually start with a blank piece of paper. It's literally, I just start.
How did this project come along, Postcards from Home? What made you think about it? Or how did the
Postcards
concept
from Home, as my mother says very beautifully, that God has held your hand and done this for you despite the odds. And there were many odds. Getting visa to Pakistan was never easy. I had a show in Pakistan, in Karachi, of my paintings. I think I was the first artist post-partition to have that show. And I got so much love, Shabana, that I feel there's no way I could have reciprocated that level of love if my friends came to India. And there I had 2, 3 very dear friends from Pakistan, and I just told them, take me to artist studios. I didn't know what I was thinking. I said, I want to extend my photography to Pakistani artists. No plan, nothing. Just my heart said, I've been photographing Indian artists. This is in 2015, right? For 12 years now. Let me just go. So I went to artist studios. The conversations there were heartwarming, and almost 65 to 70% artists had an India partition story. Either they had come from India or their parents were from India. And there was this elderly gentleman, I'm photographing him, and he just held my hand and he said, Beta, the first Indian I have met after partition. I went to an artist studio and her mother had just passed away 10 days ago. They have Sangat. So her father's a poet, her mother was a musician, and they had a prayer meeting immediately after I was to leave. And Shabana, the prayer meeting was on the Gurbani. They had a paragraph of part of the Gurbani, which would have been rendered through music, classical music, and through words as a prayer meeting for her mother, because she loved going to the Gurdwara. Now, how do you explain this? It was magical. I felt I'm privileged that I'm here, and there's a reason why I'm here. The stories I heard were from the other side of the border. I've grown up on stories from my parents and all my relatives. Now, here I am, way back in 2015, hearing stories about how they miss their home, India. I came back and it was almost like, the universe said, do something about it. And I said, I have to bring these stories together of the art world who has had a shared history with partition. I gave a TED talk on this, and I've called the WhatsApp a 6-lane virtual highway, which needs no passports or visas.
Yes.
So I did the project on WhatsApp after this.
Wow.
I brought 47 artists together, Shabana, 25 from India, 22 from Pakistan. I had photographed the Pakistani artists. I knew who had spoken about India. So they told me I said, please write me 500 words on what it is like to lose a home. What was interesting was, by then I'd been working for 12 years on Indian photographs, Indian artist photographs. I didn't know, barring Mr. Khanna or Mr. Paramjeet Singh, who else might have a history with partition? Because those conversations never happened, you see. They happened in Pakistan because I was Indian. But I won't go to an Indian artist studio and ask about partition, So I actually sent WhatsApp messages to Sindhi, Punjabi surnames. Artists who had these surnames saying, do you have a connected partition? Out came messages pouring with so-and-so, this, that. So I brought together 47 artists who are photographed by me and who have written about a home lost. I intend to take it further if you ask me. It's all self-funded, Shabana. I had no money. I still don't have it. But somewhere God's listening. My mother-in-law is an editor. She edited everything. But when I had to show it in Lahore Biennale, that time was short on funds, and Kiran Nadar said, I'll support it. So the project was supported by KNMA in Lahore at the Lahore Biennale. It was shown at Kochi Biennale, where it was supported again by KNMA and Good Earth. And that's where personal relationships come in. So Anita Lal heads Good Earth. They are my big collectors. And I happened to send her this project. I get a WhatsApp and I recognize her saying, thank you for doing this project. My BG, she said, Nani has never spoken a word about Pakistan ever since we came. That's how it hits people. I'm so glad you're telling these stories.
Yeah.
And then she supported me fully with generosity. And then, of course, it was shown at Ashmolean Museum, Oxford, for 1 year. I met many Britishers, Shabana, who did not know partition. And it hit me like a sword to my heart. Yes, exactly.
Wow.
They came to apologize to me that we did not know. And these are people who are sometimes older to me. So I said, what are you taught? They're not taught. Where I am now, the Jain monk who spiritually holds the bowl, and these bowls are beautiful wooden bowls, goes from house to house asking for alms. And the act of giving an alms to a Jain monk is an act of salvation. And, for him to ask, because they don't cook, anything which is given is their food, they won't take. I have decided I will be that Jain monk, go from university to university, museum to museum, colleges, because this project needs to be seen. And it needs to be seen all over the world, as much as my country, because people need to know partition.
Yes.
And they don't know because our parents' generation was busy putting bread on the table.
True.
Because they have given us this life now, we are able to tell their stories. And therefore, I feel, and it was as bad as the Holocaust, if not worse.
Yes.
Why people don't know about it. So that's where I am with the project. Slowly, it's finding its own voice, but I'm also steering it. Yeah.
I'm sure it will, because it has affected so many lives, and so many people will connect to, understand the stories.
And this one's about love, They still think of home. And it's also echoing with many people. You see, there's migration, there's refugees. When I showed it in Kochi, there were people who had come back from UAE. And they said, when we are here, this is home. We miss it when we are there.
Yes.
So it's actually connecting at many levels.
True.
Not just partition.
But, having dealt with the people from both the countries, what is the similarity you think? I mean, in the end, we were one country, but then we were divided, and we have all these trauma that happened during that time. And there's also a lot of hate. I mean, understandably, but, we need to slowly change that hate into love, isn't it?
So, Shabana, actually, so there is no hate when you're there. That's the thing. It's what the media shows to us. When people heard I'm from India, there was this gentleman who was giving me a lemonade for 5 days at the Lahore Biennale, and he realized on the 5th day I'm from India. He came with 550 Pakistan rupees saying, I can't take money from you. You're my sister.
Wow.
There is no hate there. There is so much love. And that is where I feel the narrative has to change, because we are not given visas to each other's countries. Because if we are given visas, there won't be any. So this project on that side of the border happened because of the love I got there. So actually the question might be, what are the differences? Because if you ask me, Shabana, when I come to even Kerala, Kochi, I go regularly for a Biennale. I don't feel part of the community as much as I feel in Lahore, because that's my language, that's my food, that's the songs, And even my Punjabi is from there because it's my parents' Punjabi. So my Punjabi is not the Amritsar Punjabi, it is the Lahore Punjabi. And it was very sweet. There was this Pakistani artist who I'd never met. She stays in UK, and we finally met in Oxford. She came to see my project. And both of us have learned Punjabi much later because our parents never spoke to us in Punjabi. I have learned it from my grandmother. She's learned it from her grandmother. So we're sitting in a cafe and speaking. And she said, oh, my grandmother was from Jalandhar. And I said, oh, mine was from this place in Pakistan. And we're speaking in Punjabi, and she said, you know what? Your Punjabi is Indian Punjabi, and my Punjabi is Pakistani Punjabi. Can you
Wow.
believe it? This is the
Yes,
third
yes.
generation. And we
Yeah.
both
Wow.
just
Yeah.
felt so nostalgic and beautiful about it. How do you explain that?
So what kind of memories do these people have from, partition or pre-partition? Or what kind of memories do they have of India or Pakistan, as being their home?
That's when you realize life comes back to basics. My
Mm.
dad, for my dad, it's playing with his friends, both Muslim and Hindu, and catching birds or eating this food in so and so friend's house. Also culture. Like my mother said something very interesting. Grandmother's best friend was a Muslim. And it was unsaid that Muslims and Hindus don't eat in each other's homes. It never became a negative issue. So a
Yes.
culture, I mean, whatever certain things were not happening, the
Yeah.
others were happening so beautifully, and it was
Mm.
understood that
It's
this is not.
understanding and respect was there.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
my dad says, so I'm learning culture. My dad says that the first harvest of the field had to go to a Muslim house. Both sides. It's all these beautiful stories, which is so basic in terms of love. There's nothing about governments, and it's all about land, food, conversation, love and integrity. So much of that. Whoever left was told by the neighbor, please go. We'll guard your home till you come back. Just go. You can't stay here. We'll drop you to the station. The world was so much nicer that time.
Yes.
And also the beauty that my parents' generation on both sides is not bitter, Shabana. They have every reason to be bitter.
Yes, they do.
My mother was 8. She was in the bathroom of a train for 3 days with 14 people.
Wow.
And the train would stop and she saw rape and killings. She has every reason to be a bitter, but
Yes.
they just smile. I saw the same energy in Pakistan. Now, when that set of people are so positive about life, having lost everything, we have no reason to be bitter, which is where projects like this become so relevant.
I mean, it's scary because we adults, because of our egos and our whatever problems we have, we're forgetting that the children are also learning from us. What are we
Absolutely.
teaching them in this world around us? Whatever is happening, so much hate and so much violence. How will they grow up? What will they think of the world? We're forgetting that.
And
Really.
that's where our old religious books, they were religious, but they were actually lessons in gratitude, forgiveness.
Yeah.
I mean, they become more relevant. For the longest time, not believe that art can change things. I would always say, Guernica is beautiful. It's about the war, but it won't make me less violent if I was a violent person, in my mind. But to some extent, I feel this project has in a very small way shifted that perception, because when I showed it in Lahore, I had such beautiful memories, anecdotes of people who were meeting an Indian for the first time. And through these stories and understanding that there is love on both sides. So I feel this project did that. It bridged a gap in a very small way. And I think the universe made me that instrument to do it for this. I've done a series of works on the whole idea of fences and borders after this, because I would really ask myself, how come my photography and my partition project has nothing to do with my painting practice? I would ask myself, why isn't it coming together? But my recent solo, it came together very effortlessly. And it was one sentence which my dad said in Punjabi, and translated, it means, if I could hop across the fence and go home. So I made a fence in green, and I called it If Fences Gathered Moss. Because if a fence gathers moss, it will look like an extended garden and it will cease to be a fence. And my dad can walk across a line of fences.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
And when I made it, I realized it looks like Urdu script.
That's what I was trying to see if I can read. Have you actually written something?
No, it's a fence. It's actually a fence.
Okay, yeah.
But it looked like Urdu. It
So
was green in
interesting.
color. And I said, look
Mm.
at this, you know.
Yeah.
But then I've done and I work a lot with pins. I
Mm.
pin paper. And the act of pinning, can you see it?
Oh, wow. Yes.
It's a whole series of works I've done.
It's beautiful.
And I relate it to my parents because they
Mm.
repeatedly speak about Pakistan every
Mm.
time I meet them.
Mm.
And here I am, and I underwent huge acupuncture. I realized I was being pinned to heal.
Healing, yes.
My husband had a triple bypass, so he was completely cut open, and he was
Mm.
cut open to live. And my parents are repeatedly speaking about home to heal themselves.
Yes.
So it's like a rosary.
Mm.
The act of repetition
Mm.
is an act of healing. And that is how the pin works happen because I I go tuck, 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 right? And my father and mother speak tuck, 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 tuck about partition. I mean, I called my show And the Dots Connect Now because I felt everything I was doing is coming
Mm.
together.
Mm.
The partition project, my
Mm.
current body of work, which is to
Mm.
do with healing,
Mm.
self-healing, my husband's healing, my parents' healing. So yeah, I mean, I would love to share what that body of work is. So
Sure.
it's all
Yeah.
come together now.
You are doing such amazing work, and we need people like you in this world to bridge gaps rather than, divide people,
Thank you.
It's very
Thank you.
important. So may God bless you and may you keep doing what you do.
Thank you, Shabana.